Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Practice Forward podcast. I'm your host, Vio Bush. Today, we are joined by Madelaine Mayer. Hi, Madelaine. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you today.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. So Madelaine is today's guest is Madelaine Mayer. She's the founder of ROIT, or I guess we say Adroit.
Just Adroit.
Adroit is a boutique interior architecture studio bringing big firm precision to small space living. With a background spanning civil institutions, hospitals, and cultural landmarks, she's worked everywhere from HOK to the New York City Department of Design and Construction. Madelaine brings a systems thinking mindset to the intimacy of residential design. A licensed architect, DCIDQ certified interior designer, WELL and LEED AP, and former BIM lead on mega projects, she now focuses on agile workflows, wellness integration, and adaptive reuse. Whether transforming pre-war apartments or speccing reversible upgrades for renters, she's also an educator at NYSID and a champion of tech that shortens the distance between intention and execution. How's that sound?
That sounds great. I love that, shortening the distance between intention and execution. I think that's so concise and well put.
Very good. So now today, I'll just say that this episode is sponsored by Scan-to-Plan, a laser-accurate as-built service trusted by architects, designers, and developers nationwide. From raw scans to Revit or CAD, Scan-to-Plan delivers clean, reliable geometry so you can design with confidence from day one. Whether you're tackling a gut reno or a tight retrofit, start smart at Scan-to-Plan. Scan-to-plan.io. Very good. Well, so let's get into this, Madelaine. Thanks so much for joining. As we said in the intro, you're now in this world of interior design and you're focusing on very small, tiny spaces, right? You're focusing enormous attention around like 100 square feet or so, right? You've come to this place from having this kind of long and storied career, working in BIM, working in tech, and working with some of the most sort of innovative firms in the world. What kind of internal signal or market signal convinced you? You were working at HOK, right?
I was.
Yeah,
and then you were several firms. Yeah.
New York City. So what kind of signal convinced you to leave that kind of HOK scale work and to launch your new firm, Adroit?
Sure. So while I really love the challenge of large scale projects and the coordination and the payoff of going into these huge spaces once they were finished, they lacked the personal touch for me. We would do 500,000 square foot offices, and every office in that company would look the same, even though the people that inhabited each of those offices were quite different from one another. There just wasn't the capacity for that level of specificity. And at the same time, the job description and the role that I occupied on those projects was similarly rigid and defined. And I've always been a very broad but deep thinker. And you kind of get shunted into certain roles, whether it's technical execution, whether it's design specification, whether it's client relations, engineering coordination, etc. And I found them all really interesting. And there was no place where I could go with my depth of experience and seniority that would let me touch everything anymore. So I decided to make it myself. It really just felt like the only logical path forward so that I could explore different project types, different design aesthetics, select the software and tech stack that I thought was best for my way of working, as opposed to globally the best across multiple teams, multiple countries, multiple project typologies, and that I could have flexibility over my day, my schedule, and just work the way that made the most sense to my brain.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, I mean, I can relate. I get bored with things really easily, and I hate doing the same thing every day. So, yeah, I guess that's why I'm just a serial entrepreneur, and I kind of create my own schedule and my own businesses. And it's also probably why I create another business every couple of years, because I'm just sort of tired of the last one.
Yeah, I do the same. It's actually my fourth business.
Oh yeah.
So I had businesses while working full time at architecture firms. I had my own jewelry company for a while. I was a yoga teacher for a while. I had a BIM consultancy with a colleague of mine for a while, where we would train others and develop family libraries for them. So I think the serial entrepreneurship gene runs strong with some people.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, you had so I guess it sounds like you were doing some of those things to some regard to sort of keep your creative brain active while you were doing highly technical work during the day, right? So and so yeah, I would say you're quite unusual in that, you have this incredible foundation in all of this really high tech, kind of cutting edge BIM type work that really only gets tackled in these large mega firms, because who else can really get into all that? So you've had that incredible experience, and now you're doing something fairly analog, I would imagine. I mean, most of what you're doing is pretty tactile and
yes and no, because we're still using BIM on every project. Everything gets modeled in Revit down to the 16th of an inch. We're still producing full sets of construction documents, and while the scope may be significantly reduced from, a 300,000 square foot hospital for a 1,300 square foot apartment, I'm still doing full construction plans, power and signal plans, floor finish plans, reflected ceiling plans, all the millwork elevations and details.
See, why would you want to do that if you're not actually doing any kind of architectural renovations?
But I mean, we are renovating. So sometimes we're renovating, sometimes we're not. But I think it's really important, the idea of like measure twice, cut once. $1 in design is $100 in construction. An hour here is a day there. And to really be prepared and to work everything out as best as you can on paper before there are any boots on the ground on site. And we're working on a project right now that is halfway through construction. We actually approved paint colors this morning because they need to start painting this afternoon, as often happens. And it's a contractor that, we've worked on several projects together, and they are always happy to show up for me because they know that the drawings and level of rigor are going to make it so much easier for them to execute the job. And we were already on, I want to say RFI-17 halfway through construction, and easily 12 of those were because we discovered things when we opened walls that needed to be rectified. And I was thinking, like, there's a lot of RFIs. These drawings should have been clearer. And they were like, are you kidding me? Normally we're at like RFI 75 at this point in the project. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, to me, it feels like a lot, because that's the rigor that we were sort of brought up with. Because if you're doing, a 200,000 square foot school, like, you can't afford to make all your decisions on the fly. There are too many critical path items. The schedule is too tight. There are too many players involved. So I think that just strengthens the position from the residential side of we're able to give the clients who are so much more personally involved with the project than when you have professional project managers for an office space. There's real feeling and concern, and it has to be personal and perfect for them. We use the phrase commit with confidence a lot because we're able to paint such an accurate, thought through picture before they agree to anything. They can see just about everything. And it lets them move forward with confidence. It lets our contractor move forward with more confidence, and we stay closer to, you know, schedules and budgets because it's all worked out in the beginning. And we couldn't do that without BIM.
Yeah. Well, it's refreshing to hear you say that. I mean, I'm always in the position of trying to convince interior designers that you know, they'd be better off that way. And you know, a lot of times they don't even know what, they don't really know what BIM is a lot of the time, or haven't really been that familiar with Revit. Seems like most interior designers work with drawings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, with ScanPlane, I always say, you know, the path to budget predictability and schedule predictability is through good data. You know, if you have good data, then, you know, hey, start working with ScanPlane. We'll get you down to under 10 RFIs. How about that?
Fantastic. One thing I will say though with BIM for residential, and where I see a true difference versus small scale residential and large scale commercial, is the specificity, excuse me, and flexibility of families. So if you're designing a custom piece of furniture for a commercial office that's going to be used 100 times, but on different floors, it's going to be done in different fabrics or a different painted finish or whatever, where some things are a type parameter of size and other things are of an instance parameter of fabric, and it's getting scheduled. You want to build that as a real family and have it be smart and be able to use it on multiple projects because maybe you use it again. With small scale residential, you use something once, twice. So you're working a little less with schedules and more one-off things that you can use words or photographs to describe. So you don't have to model your specific non-constructed elements with as much nuance and specificity. You can let a renderer take care of that, or a photograph of a product take care of that. But you still need to have everything in a model to make sure, especially in a small space, that you have all of the clearances you need, that you can physically get the piece to the space. Not ordering cabinetry and it gets to site and, oh no, it's 3/4 of an inch too long and it doesn't fit in the niche. Like, you have to, especially in New York City, you have to be disciplined and rigorous about this.
Right. So you're using that modeling internally, not necessarily as a client facing.
So we use the modeling internally. We send it to an illustrator for renderings that are client faced. We use it for construction documents for our contractor, and it is very much a living model. So every time there's an RFI that's more than just, you know, please confirm what this is. Oh, please see drawing 3 on sheet A621. Anytime there is a change, that change gets picked up in the model. It gets bubbled and delted. The page gets reissued as part of that RFI response. It is just as rigorous whether my set is 15 drawings or 150 drawings.
Yeah, right. So on your website, it says international grade rigor to micro spaces, right? So sounds like we've already talked about a little bit of that, right? So you're applying these kind of BIM workflows that, you know, would normally be applied to much larger projects. What are some other international grade rigor that you're bringing to your projects?
It's really all about process, because when you work on large projects in offices with multiple teams, there is always an ebb and flow to your project and to your workload. So you have to be ready, even if you are on team A and you're working on projects 1, 2, 3, it may be a little light for you in any given moment because, oh, we just went out to bid, so we just had our big push, and now it's going to be a little quieter for the next 2 to 3 weeks while we wait to get bids back. Meanwhile, Team B on project 7 has a crazy deadline next week and they could really use some help. So
Yep.
boss says, hey, can you go help them? They really need help. If you're documenting things differently, there's a learning curve, or you're going to make assumptions. You're not going to do it the same way. So having an established way, whether that's BIM, whether that's client intake, whether that's invoicing, whether that's administration of, this is the folder where we save the photographs from this meeting, and this is how they're named. This is where we place design research. This is
Sure.
how we go about fabric session. Whatever it is, you get more efficient by finding a consistent workflow that is applicable to all projects, and then you just pick and choose what you need, but then also documenting it so that all new team members can follow it, and so that you have a guide to go back to. Oh wait, what do we name this sheet again? Oh, it's a
Right.
reflected ceiling plan. That's A301. Oh, it's a reflected
Mhm.
ceiling plan for the 4th floor. It's A304. You always
Right.
have this touchstone, and that touches every aspect of the business, because if you're just sort of playing it by ear and seeing what feels right and doing it a different way on each project, you can't grow. You don't have a business, you have a you. And you are taking more time than you need to take to do things, because efficiency and profitability are directly linked.
Yes. Right. Well, it seems like you have a lot of systems in place that allow you to do quite a bit with a very small team, right? So you have, so you said essentially it's 2 of you at the moment, right? I mean,
Well,
obviously you have lots of consultants and other folks that
yeah.
you work with, but
So I have a local assistant who is like my right hand. So she was on site looking at paints this morning, and we were chatting over the phone, so I didn't have to be there. Uh, but I also have a virtual assistant who manages all of my procurement, vendor relationships, warehouse
Mhm.
management, troubleshooting, who is invaluable. I have an illustration team. I have a finance team. Uh, I think when you are starting a business, it is really helpful to be able to build a team that isn't necessarily hiring someone full time to be in a physical space with you. I think technology has allowed us to grow beyond that and to work with people on an as needed basis. So you're never essentially like paying for the downtime when you don't have things for them to do. But
Right.
again, you have to have those really well documented standard operating procedures so
Mm.
everyone knows exactly what they are responsible for. And you, as the business owner, need to know what you are checking and what the KPIs are, so that you can make sure all bases are covered with that type of a team structure.
I mean, absolutely. I do this all the time because I want to say, look, here's the SOP, follow this,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to hear these KPIs from you every week. And that's all I really care about. I don't really care about anything else. I just want to know, how did you do on this KPI? How'd you do on this KPI? And if folks can work with that, then,
Yeah.
there's no issues. There's no micromanagement. There's no breathing down their neck, Um,
I had a lot of that when I worked in offices. There is a tendency in architecture firms towards micromanagement. Be in by this time, don't leave before this time. And it was more about just being there, and in some cases being busy, or looking busy, than what is actually getting done or when it's getting done, particularly with things that are either creativity based. Like, I might not feel very creative at 10 o'clock this morning. I might feel very
yeah,
creative at 10 o'clock at night. Why should it matter as long as we get the work done by the time the work needs to get done.
Sure.
So it was important to me when creating a firm to extend that level of flexibility to people, that outside of fixed data points of this is when we have a team meeting every week, this is when we have a monthly meeting, this is the date by which I need these illustrations, this is a quarterly tax filing deadline. Outside of those fixed points, there's flexibility to breathe and do the work at the time that serves you best, because they think when you have agency over your life and you enjoy what you're doing, you are by default more productive, which I want people to be productive. I want them to be happier. But at the end of the day, as a business owner, it is less expensive for you to do things when you're in the mindset to do them, because what will take you 1 hour might take you an hour and a half if you're just, pushing mud and not feeling it. So I'd rather pay for an hour of good work than 2 hours of mediocre work.
Right. So now with the small firm, you're really wearing a lot of hats, I imagine. So, and it sounds like, that's intentional, right? Like before you were only allowed to wear a single hat and you wanted to wear more. And so now, you get to wear all the hats.
Yep.
But I would just say, when we spoke before, you basically made distinctions in your work between essentially project management, design, and execution as sort of kind of, I guess, maybe the three silos that you think about your work in, right? So, how do you switch between those three different mindsets over the course of a day?
With surprising ease, because I think that they're very interrelated. So particularly when I was at HOK, the metaphor used was the three-legged stool. You need each of these pillars holding up the stool, and everyone had to be in a pillar. And I find that I just naturally flow very easily between those three legs. I don't have to kind of time block for, it's a project management morning and it's an execution afternoon. I feel like that happens somewhat naturally. At the same time, I sit here, we're having this conversation together. A few minutes before coming into this meeting, I sent an email to a client that was very much project management and client relations. I've done a few other admin things this morning. At the same time, I have a stack of fabrics and wallpapers over here that I just keep glancing at every time I have, 2 minutes between an email, or I spent an hour on a phone yesterday dealing with a procurement issue with one of my vendors. And every time I was put on hold, I was like, all right, let's do 5 more minutes of sourcing on this. I don't find that, for me, it is inefficient to multitask. I kind of just go where my brain wants to be at any given moment. And I am very rigorous about to-do lists for each day. One of our tools that we use is Asana for task management, and every project is set up. There's multiple columns for stages of tasks. Every task that needs to be done gets a card, and I check that list multiple times a day and just check things off and say, okay, I have 20 minutes before my next meeting. What tasks can I fit in? Oh, this one? Great. I'll take care of that. I move very easily between the disciplines that are required.
Yeah, I always, focus on, no matter how big the project is, it can all be broken down into tasks that take under 15 minutes. And I think that unless you're really breaking your task down into that granular level, you never really truly understand the nature of the project and what really needs to go into it. I'm just getting back to you talking about these 3 legs of the stool, right? And we were talking about that being project management, design, and execution. So I think, though, that those are 3 legs of the operational stool, right? But then any business really has, and I think that, folks like you and I, we're creators. We're
Mhm.
interested in making things. We want to realize things. We want to produce stuff and get it out there. So we have a bias, right, towards the operational side of the business, right? Of making things, doing stuff. But to me, it took me a while as an entrepreneur to realize that really that's only one silo in the company. The other two silos are going to be your sales and marketing. That has to be incredibly strong, or else the whole company fails. And
Yep.
then the other side is, your financial admin side. That's all going to be probably strong, or else your company fails. If you
Yep.
don't know how much you're making, you don't know what your profit margins are, you don't know what your expenses are, the whole company is going to fall apart that way too. So I'm always looking to make sure all three of those are really strong, even
Yep.
though I bias towards operations, and just I tend to think that the company is all about just doing projects. But there's a lot more to it,
Absolutely.
uh,
And that's, I think, one of the greatest lessons and surprises that comes with entrepreneurship, because even when you spend over 2 decades in an industry as an employee,
yeah,
you don't think about that. You just think, oh, I'm good at the thing that I'm doing. I want to work for myself. Let me start a business for it. And that that creativity piece, that the projects piece is like less than 30% of what I actually do. Right?
right,
Right.
yeah,
Like the running a business and
yeah,
growing a business is immensely important. And that's the stuff that it's not taught in school. You are generally not taught that when you work for another business, even if you are in a position of senior leadership. You are
yeah,
still, my experience was that, yes, you are now a senior leader of the thing that you do. You're not
mm,
necessarily let in on, like, what are the nuances of our contracts, apart from, hey, senior leader, figure out what the proposal should be with respect to team time and fees. But like, what
right,
are the actual contract provisions? You don't meet with the lawyer to be like, look out with these things. You're not the one reviewing the firm's monthly bookkeeping, or even checking all of the team's timesheets to see,
of
like,
course,
okay, well, my proposal accounted for X hours. How many hours have we actually spent? Is this project profitable? What parts of this project are profitable? Where do we need to beef this up because we're not estimating well? You get exposed to none of that
yeah, of
when you're
course, yeah.
working in a firm.
No, I,
So
I mean it's I think there's definitely I mean, of course, it's good to keep people focused on what they're working on, right? But I think there's also a unintended consequence of that, which is that people really lose track of what is the major goal that they are going after in the company, right? Like, they may think that their goals are all about design, or their goals are all about, something technical or whatever it is, right? But really, I mean, what I try to do is get everyone from all the silos of my company to all connect with each other at least once a month, because I think it's really important for them all to report back what they've been working on, the kind of issues that they're dealing with, and then also just to remind the entire company that we all share the same goal, which is, forgive me for being so blunt about it, but it's making money. It's like we need we need to survive. We need to grow. We need to hire more people. That's the, I have to remind people that, every person on the team has a part to play in, making this company more profitable and making the company, more efficient. And so, I think it's always great to just keep people in the loop.
I agree. That's something that I did not experience. One of the things that is very common in architecture studios is that once you learn how to do a thing or a set of things, it is cost effective for the company for you to continue doing those same things over and over again, because you have gotten very efficient at doing this. So you can whip out bathroom details like that. So you keep doing those bathroom details, because my
Right.
cost per bathroom detail keeps going down the better you get at doing them. It
Sure.
doesn't matter if that person is really interested in, coordinating with clients and seeing what project management looks like.
Yeah.
You are doing bathroom details because that's what's in our best interest. But when you don't grow your people and find out what they are interested in doing, that is how you push people one step out the door. And
No
every
doubt.
time you don't listen and you don't give people the chance to grow, they get closer and closer to leaving. And I think that there is a mentality of, well, if we don't teach people how to run a business, they won't leave to start their own business and bring all the knowledge that they have acquired with us and take it somewhere else and
Right.
do the thing and maybe do it better. And that's something I have never subscribed to, because I think knowledge is empowering rather than threatening.
Mm.
And yeah, I remember very clearly. So my assistant recently graduated with her bachelor's in interior design. And so she started for me as an intern when she was still in school. And I was making projected plans last year for this year. And I was like, I know I want to bring her on for more hours. I want to get her up to full time. I want her to work on the following things. But before I did anything else based on those choices, we sat down and had a conversation. I said, so I would like to offer you a larger role in this company when you graduate. Is that something that you're interested in? And she said, yes. I said, I would like to teach you how to draw construction documents. Is that something you're interested in? She said, yes. I said, I would like to take you onto job sites so you could learn about construction administration. Is that something? She said, yeah. Wonderful, because she's going to do a better job and work harder if it's something she wants to do. And if it's not something she wants to do, well, okay, we'll keep you doing the things that you do want that you're already doing, and I'll find someone else to do those jobs. Because work shouldn't be suffering through things. It should be as exciting and joyful and empowering as possible, especially in an industry like this.
Absolutely. And, for that reason, I actually take all of my employees out for lunch once a month, individually, one-on-one. And I tell them, we can't talk about the company. We're not talking about work at this lunch. What we're talking about is, what's going on with you? What are you interested in? How are you enjoying working with us? What would you like to be doing? How can the company serve you better in your goals to evolve in the way that you want to in your career? So I'm always asking folks that question because I don't want to lose them, and I can see, So, and I'm sure a lot of the firms that lost you are wishing you were still around. So, so anyway, you have this really deep technical background. Lead AP and well AP. So does that ever come to play in your interior design work? All that kind of sustainability background?
It does. Not quite as much as it did commercially and at a larger scale. We're not doing, lead interiors by room for clients right now. But we really try to source as sustainably as possible. So here we selected paints this morning. Shout out to Benjamin Moore. We're using EcoSpec as their base. It's a 0 VOC paint. We try to use FSC certified wood products whenever we're specifying anything with wood. We try to use noxious chemical free fabrics and flame retardant free fabrics, so fabrics that are naturally flame resistant because you still want that measure of safety for our clients. We try to specify furniture that's formaldehyde free and meets California Prop 65. We try to do American and locally made pieces whenever possible. North Carolina is the furniture capital of the country. There are vendors that I work with down there, both for made to order pieces where we just specify a fabric and it's on one of their base frames. And, I have a workroom down there that will also make completely custom upholstery for me. That is super comfortable, and they're all, ticking their sustainability boxes with respect to like their foam and their batting and where they're sourcing their springs and all of that. So we're not, I'll be the first to say we're not perfect, particularly with challenging New York City spaces and awkward corners and smaller areas. Sometimes you have to make a choice between that thing that's on, an online retailer that's scaled at more of an entry level versus something that's completely custom and a gajillion dollars, and you only have so much flexibility in your overall investment. But we do the best we can. We try to educate our clients as much as possible. I think one of the components of a healthy environment that sometimes gets overlooked in these standards is just the emotional and mental health of the people who occupy the spaces. It's great to focus on recycled materials. I love a recycled plastic bottle rug as much as the next person. And it's great to focus on improving indoor air quality. I have filters that are washable in every room of my home. Like, all of these things are great, but we also need the spaces themselves to lift people up and bring them joy. And so sometimes that's some piece that doesn't necessarily have the backsheet credentials yet. That's the others do. But if it's going to create a truly immeasurably better impact for the clients, I will pick that over something that does not bring as much joy, but maybe has a slightly better tear sheet.
Sure. Walk us through a time that Adroit chose like a reversible detail over a more kind of lucrative permanent install, right? So how do you make those decisions, and what changed that decision in one of those cases?
The decisions are always based on what's in the best interests of the client long term. I like to joke that my father is a gastroenterologist, and he is a wonderful gastroenterologist. He has had his own practice for over 40 years. My father is a terrible businessman, and he's the first person who will tell you this. We have conversations now, particularly since I've been out on my own full time. I'm like, well, Dad, how often do you look at your P&L? And he's like, I don't. I'm like, what are you talking about? You run a business. My dad is the person who will just take patients who don't have insurance and just charge them because he's like, but I want to help. Like, you're in pain.
You should give me his number. I could use somebody like that.
So yeah, I will. He's in Brooklyn. So he's really easy to get to. He'll see people late at night, early in the morning. Like, so I very much have a degree of that in myself. I have a counterbalance of I still have to pay my rent and make payroll, and I have to be smart, and being really smart about tools allows me the flexibility to maybe, walk away from some other aspects that may be more lucrative. So as an example, we recently completed installation for a young girl's bedroom, and we have wallpaper on the walls, we have wallpaper on the ceiling. They're both cloud-based, but different patterns. We have cloud knobs on the drawers and cloud wall sconces. It's very cloud and butterfly room. And she had a very awkward closet that I was like, we can get so much more storage out of this closet. Can we redo this for you? And my clients, the parents were like, yes, let's redo this. But she's 2.5.
Uh-huh.
This is not her forever incarnation of a bedroom.
Of course.
She's 2.5.
Yeah.
So we chose a, removable wallpaper for both the walls and the ceiling. We installed IKEA PAX cabinets and wardrobes in her closet. Both of these things give the clients tremendous flexibility. They can reconfigure the closets as needed. Does she need to hang more stuff? Does she need more drawers? Based on how tall she gets and how big the clothes are, they can move things around on their own. They don't need to call my team back in to do that. Could I have made a whole lot more money doing custom, just fixed cabinets, even if they had adjustable shelves? Yes, but that wasn't in their best interest. Could I made more money just picking a conventional wallpaper from one of my higher end D&D building wallpaper suppliers? You bet. Could I have selected wall sconces that were, more sophisticated and forever and made more? Yes. Was that in their interests? No. So I didn't, because it's important to me to serve the client and to build the relationship so that in 5 years, when their daughter grows out of clouds and butterflies, they say, hey, so we're done with clouds and butterflies. Can you help us create her, preteen to early teen years room?
Right. Yep.
That's the important thing to me, is how can I be of service?
Well, great. Maybe you can talk my daughter out of painting her walls avocado green.
Yes.
She's in her teen phase. So you're also an educator, right? So tell me a little bit about what classes are you teaching now?
So I am not currently teaching. I took a break to really get Adroit up and off the ground and running. But for a few years prior to that, I was teaching at the New York School of Interior Design in their MFA and Interior Design program. For anyone listening, big shout out to NYSID. It's a fantastic program. And I was teaching design technology studios. So everything from hand drawing with graph paper and understanding what is a scale. How do we use a scale? What does that mean when you scale a drawing? How do we translate something? And we actually used avocados and red peppers as examples, where we would have students bring like fruit and vegetables to class the first day and like cut them in half to understand what a section was. We had them draw them in plan and draw them in elevation and then draw the section of it, all the way through learning AutoCAD, learning SketchUp, learning V-Ray, learning Photoshop, learning Revit. And along the way, and what was always an important focus for me, that as I understand it, other educators did not press as firmly on, but I think it's the sooner you learn things that are non-negotiable, the easier they are to fold into your process and your thinking from the beginning. So
what is non-negotiable? What would you say is a non-negotiable skill for someone graduating from interior design?
Awareness of the ADA was one of the things that I folded in very early.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw way too many times people trying to sort of talk their way out of ADA requirements, talk their way out of building code requirements.
So just for our audience, ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires everything to be wheelchair accessible and accessible in other ways for handicapped folks.
Absolutely. So there are dimensional requirements around doors. There's all of the requirements with restrooms, with grab bars and stall size and turning radius and clearances of various objects. There's projections into a path, so if someone's visually impaired, they don't hurt themselves. There's a whole lot of things. And while we don't necessarily push hard on every single one in an academic situation, be aware. Don't create spaces that are physically hard to navigate.
Sure.
As someone who's had, a few instances of somewhat limited mobility through various things, so you could be 100% healthy, mobile, everything comes easily to you one day, and the next, that might not be the case, or someone you love. So there's no reason
Just happened to be. I broke my ankle in February, and I got to test the ADA compliance of all my favorite restaurants.
Yeah. How are you feeling now?
Much better. I'm walking around, and everything's. You never know.
Right, but like probably the week before you broke your ankle, things about if there is a step or two to get into a restaurant, and if there's at least 3 feet in front of the door to navigate that off those steps, probably didn't even enter your mind.
I had to go around on a scooter. I started noticing every single crack in the sidewalk and the grade of the sidewalk, and everything becomes incredibly it becomes like a life or death situation. Like if you're on a grade that's at 10 degrees, you're going to be tipping over,
Yeah.
So
we do things, and I remember myself doing things in design school, whether it was undergraduate or graduate, that 100% would not fly. Like in no world would they be allowed. And our instructors wanted to push creativity, so everything was held up by magic. Then so it was like, I don't know, they're still in there somewhere. Like that's how this 60-foot cantilever works, right? Like there were, which great, like entertain the fantasy, but at the same time be aware of the genuine constraints of the physical environment and the human body, because we're not here in an MFA for oversized sculpture. We're here in MFA for environments for humans to inhabit and move around, and design should make all of our lives easier and better, not more challenging. So
absolutely.
That was always really important to me. I think, flexibility and a willingness to listen and learn are also non-negotiables. Like if we're in class and I throw you a bit of a curveball, I want you to try to take a swing at the ball.
Yeah.
I want you to not just take the most direct path to a problem. This is also why I tell clients when they're like, why do I have to wait 6 months to work with you? Like, I'm reaching out to you in, July 1. Why can't you meet with me until January 15th to start my project? Because I only have 2 to 3 people in my brain in design at any given time. Because you don't want my first idea, you want my best idea. And that takes time and flexibility and a willingness to listen and change. I could have an idea based on our first conversation, and that's going to change when I first see your space. And that's going to change again after the third conversation. And if you don't have that agility, what you're going to wind up with are fairly boring and repetitive solutions that are not truly specific to the person requesting them. And I think that specificity is what differentiates good design from great design.
Sure. Well, hey, so if you project yourself, let's say 5 years in the future, okay, let's say it's 2030 now, and Adroit is doing great. And what kind of success do you see? How do you see beyond revenue? What kind of other brand footprint or influence or legacy are you looking for?
What a great question. I see a lot of growth, and that growth is both internal and external. So I've mentioned my assistant several times. In 5 years, I see her running jobs. I see her as a project manager here, where I still have a hand in everything, but she's able to tackle more on her own. And that we have another junior designer who's here that she is in turn mentoring. Mentorship has always been such a big part of my practice and who I am, the education folds into that. And I think a lot of it is because in many offices, I struggled with finding mentors who understood me and really wanted to help me grow. So it's always been important for me to do that for as many young designers as possible. So I see growth on that level. Last year, I started working with journalists on like design expert features and articles with, a lot of quotes and a lot of feedback. This year, that's grown to include photographs of
Mhm.
my work. So in 5 years, I see a spread in AD in print, something where my mom could be like, this magazine, this is my daughter. Look at her
That's
work in
great.
this magazine.
I'm sure
So
you're going to get that. I'm sure you're going to get that, Madelaine.
that's definitely happening. And last year, I started an initiative called Adroit Cares, where we donate, I want to say 10%, but it always winds up being more than that because I just round up to the next whole reasonable increment. But we donate at least 10% of profits to nonprofit organizations that we think are doing great work out in the world and
Wow.
resonate with our values. So the two that we donated to last year are the Abortion Care Network, which helps provide safe abortion and reproductive healthcare access to women across the country, and the Trevor Project, which really helps provide social services to queer and homeless youth, particularly trans youth.
Mhm.
This year, in addition to those donations, I've added design consultation donations to silent auctions at various events throughout the city. So we
Hmm.
did the New York Junior League, which I'm also a member of, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and the Ali Forney Project. So in 5 years, I want our philanthropy to be more than I can even imagine right now, because I think it's
Sure.
really important to support your community and stand for the things that you believe in now more than ever.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hey, just a quick little lightning round here.
Yeah,
Here on Practice Forward, we talk a lot about tools and technology, right? And obviously, you're an expert in a lot of these things. So let me just ask you, what is one tool you'll never give up?
Revit.
One tool that you've happily left behind, and one that you're testing
Yep.
next quarter.
So I will never give up Revit. Revit for life. Um, I was very happy to leave behind CAD.
Uh-huh.
That is a real like either or, I think, situation.
Yeah.
And I will never live in a 2D world ever again. And for next quarter, we are testing ActiveCampaign for email. So I actually registered for this last week.
Okay.
I'm currently having my website rebuilt and rehosted. And that is my web designer's preferred email campaign. And I think it's going to offer a lot more insights with respect to marketing and which links people are clicking and how long they're staying. And I'm excited for that because, as we talked about before, sales and marketing, if you don't have that, you don't have a business. So
Exactly.
especially now that my assistant is doing more and learning more, that gives me the bandwidth to move my focus more to that sales and marketing tool because I have trustworthy support on the operations side.
Right. Well, so you made a pretty unusual pivot going from large scale architectural to small interiors. So if let's say you're speaking to another architect who's thinking about making that pivot, what unwritten rules should they break first, and what should they keep sacred about what they know?
So definitely keep sacred that you're always serving your clients, because we do
Yeah.
that in architecture as well, but we sometimes get stretched a little further from that, or the demands are different. But like that rule, we are here in service of our client. We're not in service of our own egos. Like, just because you're obsessed with a fabric doesn't mean they're going to be obsessed with a
Sure.
fabric or a design solution in general. Even if you think something is like, no, this is the layout,
Yeah.
great. But if they see it and they still don't want that, you have to walk away from that.
Mhm.
In terms of rules that they should break, you're allowed to use color. You're allowed to add molding. I'm a very classically trained modern architect, Georgia Tech. We're in like a Brewer-esque brutal building. Like, just everything was concrete and steel and glass, and Mies was next to God, like all of that. And it's a lot more fun living in color. I have wallpaper sitting on my desk for a project that's covered in green dragons.
Oh, nice.
Dragons! You can't put that in an office building for 100,000 square feet. You can absolutely put it behind a bookcase in someone's apartment. Let
Sure.
yourself have fun and find the color and the pattern and the specific joys with each client that you've had to shut off working larger scale and more universally appealing.
Right. Well, that sounds like I'm so happy for you. It sounds like you've really charted a really a very, copacetic path for yourself, and really looking forward to seeing more exciting work coming out of Adroit. So once again, everyone, joined today by Madelaine Mayer. She's the founder and principal of Adroit, and you can check them out at ad-roit.com. And I'm Vio and Bush. I'm founder of Scan2Plan. This is our sponsor for today. You can check us out at scan2plan.io. And Madelaine, thanks so much for joining us, and really looking forward to catching up with you soon. We got to keep me posted on everything that's going on with you.
I will, and thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's great to see you today. And thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Practice Forward podcast. Bye, Madelaine. See ya.
Bye.